Here we go. Humanities 101 and Nachos reminds you that you are enough. Now we join Dr. Dutch with the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome back, Nachonauts, to the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support. I am your host, Dr. Dutch, and this is the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for outreach and support on September 22nd, and I am so glad that you're with me here today because September 22nd isn't just any date, it's Hobbit Day. And that's the shared birthday of Bilbo and Frodo Baggins. Now, hobbits may be small in stature, but the lessons they carry are enormous. They remind us that you don't have to be the loudest voice in the room to change the world. You don't have to be the tallest, the strongest, or the most conventional. What matters is curiosity, courage, kindness, and the ability to find joy in the simple things, like a good meal, a cozy home, or the company of trusted friends. For our Nachos community, there's so much resonance here. Hobbits remind us that everyday lives, our everyday lives, are worthy of celebration. Ordinary people can do extraordinary things when they stand together. And lastly, that even when the road is long and full of shadows, there's hope and strength in taking the next small step forward. So today, let's honor Hobbit Day by remembering what they teach us. To be grounded, to be joyful, to be resilient, and to never underestimate the quiet power of community. And as Tolkien reminds us, quote, now it is a strange thing, but things that are good to have and days that are good to spend are soon told about and not too much to listen to, while things that are uncomfortable, palpitating, and even gruesome may make a good tale and take a deal of telling anyway. And that truth lands deeply for us Nachonauts. Our happiest moments may pass quietly, like second breakfast or a walk in the Shire, but our harder days, our burnout, our struggles, those are the stories we tend to revisit, retell, and carry with us. What Hobbits remind us is that even the hardest chapters are part of a larger journey. They may make for the longest tales, but they also teach us courage, connection, and the value of choosing joy when it finally arrives. In our community, we're learning that the quiet joys matter just as much as the dramatic struggles. And while the world may be drawn to stories of conflict and trial, we can make space here, in this place, to savor the extraordinary goodness of everyday life. The meals we share, the care we extend, and the ways that we remind each other that belonging is its own kind of magic. And that's really what the Michigan Disability Empowerment Conference and Humanities 101 and the Nachos community is all about. Just as Hobbits prove that the smallest voices can shape the greatest journeys, the MDEC is our moment to shine light on the ideas and creativity that might otherwise be overlooked. Now, if you're a student of mine and you're working on your midterm, I want you to hear this clearly. Your project doesn't have to stay locked inside of a classroom. You have a chance to send it out into the world, to present it at a statewide conference where community leaders, advocates, and change makers will be listening. Now imagine your idea standing shoulder to shoulder with experts, organizations, and innovators who are all working to build a more inclusive world. This isn't just about a grade. It's about impact. It's about showing the world what you see, what you imagine, and how you can shape the future. Submitting your midterm to the MDEC means your voice doesn't just count, it echoes. So Nachonauts, think of it this way. Bilbo didn't know that one step out of his front door would lead to an adventure that changed the world. Your midterm could be that first step. Don't miss the chance to take it. And just like Bilbo stepping out his door, submitting your midterm to the MDEC isn't just about one small step. It's about stepping into a larger story. A story that says your perspective belongs in shaping the future of accessibility, balance, and belonging. And that brings us right into this week's focus: universal design. In Academic Ableism, J. Dolmage reminds us that universal design, or UD, began in architecture, but has always been about more than ramps, railings, or lever-style door handles. At its heart, universal design asks the question, what if we design spaces, systems, and experiences so that no one had to be retrofitted in after the fact? Ronald Mace, the thinker and designer who coined that term, called universal design, quote, the design of products and environments to be usable by all people to the greatest extent possible without the need for adaptation or specialized design. Dolmage warns that too often universities treat access as an afterthought, relying on what he calls retrofits, fixes like extra time on a test or an added ramp, but that makes disability look like a problem to be solved rather than a perspective to center. But universal design flips that script. Instead of focusing on fixing the deficit of disabled students, it calls on us to redesign the environment itself. And that means creating classrooms where multiple modes of learning and expression are built in from the beginning. Lectures alongside transcripts, or even closed captioning. Group discussions alongside quiet reflection, projects that can be essays, videos, or even presentations at statewide conferences. Universal design isn't just a checklist. It's a mindset of planning for hybridity and planning for transformation. Dolmage even talks about deep accessibility, access not just to the building, but to the senses, the communication, the orientation of a space, and ultimately the agency to shape that space. And that resonates so deeply with us at Nachos because here we're not just talking about entering a room, we're talking about belonging in the story being told inside it. For our Nachonauts, this is where the lessons of the Hobbits meet the ethics of universal design. Hobbits remind us that the ordinary people and simple joys matter. Universal design reminds us that ordinary bodies and minds, all the shapes and rhythms of human experience, belong at the design table. Together, they teach us that real community is built when we stop asking who can fit in and start asking how can we shape the space so that everyone belongs from the start. And that's why your midterm project matters so much. It's not just a grade. It's a chance to practice universal design in action. When you imagine a solution, when you tell a story, and when you propose an idea for MDEC, you are taking part in redesigning our shared world. Just like Frodo and Sam discovered, the road may be full of steep steps and shadows, but each small act of design, each moment where we make space for another voice, carries us closer to a world where everyone belongs. And that's the PB&J ethic that we talk about here at Nachos. Predictability that eases those steep steps, balance that allows for multiple ways of showing up, and joy that insists on celebrating both the ordinary good days and the hard tellable stories. Universal design is one way we can live that ethic together. And as we turn from universal design, there's another piece of Dolmage's academic ableism that feels especially important for us as Nachonauts. And so we need to sit with this. It's the chapter called Disability on Campus, on film. Dolmage begins with a sharp observation. On our real campuses, disability is often hidden, underrepresented, or hidden away. But in movies about college life, disability shows up everywhere, though not in ways that affirm or empower. In fact, it's usually exaggerated, distorted, and bent into a kind of narrative tool. And think about the films you might know, comedies like Accepted, Back to School, or even animated ones like Monsters University. In these stories, disability rarely appears as an authentic lived experience. Instead, it becomes a symbol, a metaphor, a joke, or even a hurdle for others to overcome. Characters with disabilities are often written as lessons for their able-bodied peers, or they're cast off, cured, or erased before the story closes. And almost always, when disability is on screen, it's being performed by an able-bodied actor who collects the praise for playing disabled. Dolmaj reminds us that these films don't just reflect stereotypes, they reinforce the deeper structures of exclusion on campus itself. They show universities as places of rigid hierarchy where, who belongs and who doesn't, who gets objectified and who doesn't, is all a play of power. Some even draw a sharp line between colleges and prisons or asylums, making it clear how connected those institutions of control really are. At the same time, many of these movies layer on rape culture, hyper-heteronormativity, and even subtle eugenic messages about who is desirable and who isn't, who gets chosen and who doesn't. And this is where we, as Nachos community members, need to lean in. Because if movies keep telling us that disability is just a metaphor, or disabled people don't really belong in the center of campus life, those stories begin to shape expectations. And those expectations begin to shape our reality. They seep into the culture. Students may step onto campus already carrying that silent message that this space isn't really for you. But what we are doing here, and what you're doing in your midterms and at places like the MDEC, we are rewriting that script. And we're showing that disability is not a side plot. It's not an object lesson or a comedic relief moment. It is central, vibrant, and powerful. It is such a central part of the story. What we're saying is that disabled voices don't just belong in the audiences. They belong in the front of the room, on the panel, behind the mic, and at the drafting table shaping the design of the future. And maybe that's why I keep coming back to Hobbits on a day like this. In Tolkien's world, Hobbits are often overlooked, underestimated, dismissed as too small and too ordinary to matter. Yet it's precisely their ordinariness, their joy in simple things, and their resilience in the face of shadows that makes them indispensable. In the same way, the voices erased from film and hidden on campus may be the ones with the most to teach us about resilience, about joy, and about how to build communities that truly hold everyone. So as you work on your projects, think of yourself as script writers in this larger story. You get to decide how disability or difference is represented. You get to offer the world not another stereotype, but a vision of belonging that feels whole, honest, and affirming. And that's the work of Humanities 101. That's the work of Nachos. That's the work of the Michigan Disability Empowerment Conference. And that is the kind of story worth telling. As we sit with these ideas, it's worth remembering that the stories we consume, whether they come from Tolkien's Middle-earth or a college comedy, aren't just entertainment. They shape how we see ourselves, how we see others, and how we imagine what's possible in our communities. When films push disability to the margins, they reinforce a culture of exclusion. When universal design pushes us to plan for belonging from the start, it invites us to rethink those margins altogether. And when Hobbits remind us that small voices and everyday joys matter, they teach us that power doesn't always look like what we expect. So here's your weekly question, Nachonauts. When you look at the way college life is portrayed in movies, how well does it match your own experience here at our college? What feels missing? What feels exaggerated or completely absent from those depictions? If you had a chance to rewrite the storyline to reflect the reality of our community, our classrooms, our diversity, our challenges and joys, what would you add or change to make the story more authentic, inclusive, and true to who we are? So again, think about your own experience and reflect back on that. And I want you to address this in the chat. Now, pulling back on this all together, we can see that the thread's weaving into a single tapestry. Hobbit Day reminds us that the smallest voices can carry the greatest weight, and that ordinary lives are worth honoring. Universal design challenges us to rethink our classrooms and our communities so that everyone belongs from the very beginning, not as an afterthought. And Dolmaj's chapter on disability in film reminds us that culture too often erases or distorts our lives, turning them into tropes rather than truths. But here, in this nacho space, we get to rewrite that story. we get to say our voices matter. Our midterms, our projects, our ideas, our participation in the MDEC are not just academic exercises. They are acts of restorying, acts of design, acts of resistance against narratives that erase and exclude. They are proof that disabled and different voices and neurodivergent perspectives don't just belong in the story, they belong at the very center. And maybe that's the deepest connection of all. Whether you're a hobbit stepping out of your front door, a student reimagining your midterm as a public project, or a nachonaut daring to question the stories we've inherited, you're part of something bigger. You're reminding the world that joy, resilience, and belonging are not just possible, they are necessary. And together, we're building a new kind of story, one where every brain has a seat at the table and every voice has a place in the chorus. But here's the thing, Nachonauts. Rewriting the story doesn't just mean rejecting the old scripts. It means daring to imagine something new. Tolkien's Hobbits remind us that even the smallest steps, the most ordinary acts, well, those things can change the course of human history. Universal design shows us that environments don't have to be patched together after the fact, that they can be shaped from the start with everyone in mind. And the way disability is distorted or erased in film reminds us how urgent it is to tell better stories. Stories where our voices are not props or metaphors, but leaders, dreamers, and creators. What we've learned this week is that design and storytelling go hand in hand. A film can design a narrative of who belongs and who doesn't just as powerfully as a classroom layout or a policy can. If the dominant stories tell us that disabled people are objects of pity or inspiration, or that college life is about exclusion or hierarchy, then we carry those narratives with us. We hold those narratives as true. But if we design new spaces and tell new stories rooted in joy, equity, and belonging, then we begin to rewire what community looks like and how we see it in our mind's eye. And this is why your midterm project in the Michigan Disability Empowerment Conference matters so much to me and so many others. They're not just an assignment or a one-day event. They're acts of design in their own right. When you craft a project that includes multiple ways of engaging, you're practicing universal design. When you tell a story that puts disability at the center rather than at the margin, you are pushing back against stereotypes on screen. And when you submit your work to the MDEC, you are taking your voice from the classroom into a larger movement, reshaping our state and reshaping our collective cultural understanding. And there's another lesson from Hobbits here. They never traveled alone. Frodo had Sam, Bilbo had Gandalf and a company of dwarves. The journey has always been shared. It's always been communal. And that's exactly what we're building here at Nachos. A space where we can walk together, where your voice strengthens mine and mine strengthens yours. Rewriting the story is not a solo act. It's a chorus. It's a weaving of many voices. It's a table where every brain brings something that makes the meal richer. So what do we take from this episode? First, that joy and struggles are both worth honoring. You got to honor them both, the joys and the struggles. As Tolkien wrote, the good days may be short to tell, but the difficult ones are the ones we remember, the ones that shape us. Second, design is not neutral. The way we build classrooms, movies, or communities, that either affirms belonging or enforces exclusion. And third, rewriting the story is our task, not just for ourselves, but for those who will come after us. Every midterm submitted to the MDEC, every reflection shared in discussion, every small act of showing up for one another is part of our collective bigger work. The invitation then is simple. Step out your door like a hobbit today, even if you don't know where the road will take you. Step into the work of universal design, trusting that planning for belonging is worth the effort. Step into the story you want to see told about our college, our community, our future, our state, our world. Because together, Nachonauts, we're proving that another story is possible. And we are all the ones writing that story. And so that brings us to the closing of this week's Nachos, the Neuro-Affirming Conversation Hour for Outreach and Support. And we've walked together through Hobbit Day, learning from the smallest of heroes that even extraordinary voices can carry extraordinary weight. We've explored universal design, discovering that belonging isn't an afterthought. It's something that we can plan for, shape, and protect from the very beginning. And we pulled back the curtain on how disability is distorted on film, reminding ourselves of the urgent need to tell better stories, stories that affirm and stories that do not erase. And in all of that, here's the truth I want you to leave with. Your story matters. And I don't mean that lightly. I mean that your story, your voice, your perspective, your lived experience, it's not optional. It's not background. It's not exposition. It is not something to tack on later. It is central. So hear this, Nachonauts. Your voice matters. Even if it trembles, even if it feels too small, even if the world tells you it's the not the right kind of voice, it matters. Your perspective matters. The way you see the world through your neurodivergence, through your disability, through your resilience. That's not a flaw to be corrected. It's a gift that we all need to benefit from. You are not a side character. You are not a plot character. You are not comic relief. You are not a teaching moment for someone else's growth. You're not a metaphor. Your life is not here to symbolize struggle or inspire others with pity. Your life is your own, full of meaning and beyond performance. You're not an afterthought. You are not something to be accommodated after the real plans are made. You belong in the blueprint from the beginning. You are at the center of the story we are writing together, and that story is one of belonging, of joy, of resilience, of rewriting rewriting what the world told us we had to be. And just like hobbits never walked alone, you don't have to either. This community, this nacho space, is here to walk beside you. We're here to celebrate the moments of joy, to steady each other in the harder chapters, and to remind one another that belonging is not conditional. It is not earned. It is yours. You are part of our fellowship. So as you step into your week, I hope you carry these affirmations with you. You are worthy of being heard. You're worthy of being included. You are worthy of being celebrated. And again, may you find predictability in the steady rhythms that help you breathe easier. May you find balance in the choices that honor both your needs and your growth. And may you find joy in the ordinary moments, the second breakfasts, the laughter with friends, the little victories, the things that make the journey worth telling. Keep stepping out the door. Keep daring to design for belonging. Keep rewriting the story, because the truth is, Nachonauts, you always have a seat at the table, and your voice will always have a place in my chorus.